and gentlemen, a very good evening to you, and welcome to the first in our 7th series of Doha Debates. We really have come that far, broadcasting to you from the Gulf state of Qatar and sponsored by the Qatar Foundation. Was there ever a small piece of cloth that has created so much comment and controversy? The face veil or niqab worn by some Muslim women that has become a bone of contention not only in Western countries but in parts of the Arab world as well. Is it the right of every woman and man, incidentally, to dress as they please for whatever reason? Or does each society also have a right to set limits according to its cultural traditions? And where should those limits lie? Well, our motion tonight, this House believes that France is right to ban the face veil. France, of course, is the only Western country that has so far passed a ban on the wearing of the niqab in public. Other countries are grappling with the issue, and in the Islamic world too, we're seeing partial restrictions in Syria and other countries as well. Your decision, as ever, to accept or reject this motion, and our speakers will argue passionately both for and against it. Speaking in favour, Jacques Myard, member of the French National Assembly. He's also a city mayor and a member of the French Foreign Affairs Committee. And with him, Mehdi Hasan, a writer and advocate for women's rights. Among other books, she's written Islam, Women and the Challenges of Today, and is a former president of the Muslim Canadian Congress. Against the motion, Nabila Ramdani, a journalist and academic. She's taught, among other places, at Oxford University and was nominated this year for the inaugural European Muslim Women of Influence Award. And with her, Mehdi Hasan, senior political editor of the UK's New Statesman magazine. He's been a commissioning editor for Channel 4 TV in Britain and is a frequent debater on Muslim issues. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel. So now let me first of all ask Jacques Myard to speak for the motion.
Thank you, Tim, and I'm very glad to be here to try to explain what is happening in France. First of all, I would like to tell you that the French society is a secular state. That means that churches are separate from the state, and our laws are voted by the parliament and are not prompted by any religion of any kind, either Catholics, Jews, Buddhists, or any other religions. For centuries, we live in a mixed society. That means women are really taking part in our debate, in our political life, as our queens. And remember Joan of Arc leading army against the barbarian English who invaded France against our will, and she has been leading successfully the battle against the English. Never in our history anybody had worn, some piece of cloth in front of his face or her face. And this is a common standard in our country. Equality of sex is absolutely now a constitutional principle, even if France, compared to Turkey, only granted vote in 1945 when Turkey granted vote to French women, in 1920s. Face veil then appeared for the huge majority of French nation as a blow, a breach of common will. It has the sense of maintaining women in a minor status when men have all rights and women not, because it starts with the veil, but it continues with other aspects of this problem. And of course, this is contrary to the dignity of a human person that we share all together. So let me put very clearly, we ban a practice, but we don't ban a religion, you see, because other religions have been banned of practices as well, so it applies to anybody.
Jacques Myard, thank you very much indeed. What's the great danger with the face veil? What are you so afraid of in France? Why the heavy hand of the law?
Because, you see, this is a phenomenon which has been growing up in the past years, which was unknown about 5 or 6 years ago.
But you're a strong liberal democracy. You've been around for hundreds of years. Are you that fragile that you're threatened by a couple of hundred people?
It's a common will, you see. When people are trying to to exclude themselves from the common will to live together. And this is what we perceive. And I think
why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they?
Because we live in a common society.
It's a piece of clothing. Somebody might not like your tie.
No,
they might not like the tie you're wearing.
It's a question of time. Of course, I like certain meals. I don't like those other meals. I can understand. But when, the face is the soul of a citizen. And when you exclude me of seeing your face, then you want to put me aside. And this is why I say, sorry, we all live together. And if you exclude me, I am the victim. I am the victim because you refuse me to see your face.
Why are you the victim? How does that change your life? I mean,
It changed
how
my
does that
life
affect your life?
because I have
how insecure you feel as a result of
it's not a
this.
question of security. I did not speak of security. This is the common standards of citizenship in France that everyone shows its face or her face to anybody. And you know what is something very annoying in this phenomenon is that because it starts with a question of veil and face, and then it goes to hospital.
So it's annoying. This is what you have against it. It's simply annoying.
No, it's not only annoying. It's the way people are behaving, and they exclude themselves from the national community.
Your justice minister says that a face-covering veil, she says, is against public social order. What on earth does that mean?
Social order is not the police eating at people in the street. Social order is common rules that we'll all accept as the basis of a common life in a nation. That's equality of sex. This is freedom of responsibility, etc., etc.
Okay, what's next? Shoes with no tassels?
No, not at all. You know, don't characterize things like that. Because, in fact, when you are citizens, you agree on common standards. You don't share them all, but there are basis principles that you accept.
All right, Jacques Myard, thank you very much indeed. Now, could I ask, please, Nabila Ramdani to speak against the motion?
As a proud French citizen, I was always brought to respect people, other people within a diverse democracy, not the autocratic, intolerant republic that this ban represents. The ban has nothing to do with unity. It is aimed at stigmatizing a small number of women and, in turn, the Muslim community from which they come. By putting all its resources into publicizing such deceit, the French government has done nothing but divide people. Fallacious arguments about national identity and secularism have captured the kind of anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim sentiments which have made parties like the National Front so successful. This government's campaign has corrupted the very meaning of the secular society, which should be all about reconciling different lifestyles and not suppressing them. It is my firm belief that all the arguments used to support the ban are based on a myth. Where are the statistics which link the face veil with threats to public safety? What have vicious comments about people's clothes got to do with unity? When did the secular society stop to ensure or to guarantee dissent or religious devotion? And the argument about the oppression of women is also a myth. The idea that an abusive man will stop his crimes because his victim cannot wear a full veil in public anymore is illogical. If these women living on estates are uncomfortable with the kind of consumerism and over-sexualization of an increasingly materialistic society, why shouldn't they express their dissent against it? They harm nobody, and they certainly need not to be protected against themselves. I feel sure that European courts are set to challenge France's ban, just as they are set to challenge other tactics like the persecution of Roma gypsies. And for all these reasons, I would implore everyone to reject tonight's motion.
Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much indeed. You've called this French ban Muslim baiting. Is it Muslim baiting when senior clerics at the Al-Azhar Mosque in Cairo also support the ban? Is it when Turkey supports the ban, Syria, Tunisia? Are they Muslim baiting as well, or are you being selective here?
Well, I don't think this law is aimed into, considering a theological debate about...
No, but it's clearly nonsense to talk about it as Muslim baiting when you have so many senior Muslim clerics who actually support this ban.
Well, when a French government introduces a ban bringing on all the vicious assumptions associated with a perfectly decent religion, for example, it assumes with no evidence whatsoever that women are forced...
But you're not answering the question. I'm saying that somebody like Abdul Muti al-Bayami, he's at Al-Azhar Mosque, he's a senior cleric in Cairo, he says, I personally support this ban, and many of my brothers in the Islamic Research Academy support it as well. Is he Muslim baiting? Yes or no? Is he Muslim baiting?
No, he's having his own personal opinion.
Okay,
just
so
as
France is having its own personal opinion?
Absolutely.
Why are they Muslim baiting?
Well, the French government should be able to make its own decisions without international pressures, just like these women should be allowed to make their own decisions without pressure from the state.
It's making its own decision, isn't it? The French government is making its decision based on what the majority would like. That's what countries do. That's what democracies do, don't they?
It is based on no evidence whatsoever that, for example, women are forced to wear the full veil, that men are forcing them to do so, and that somehow the veil represents a threat to national security.
But isn't it enough for them just to say, well, we don't like it, we don't want it on our streets, and we're going to ban it? That is to them, it's their concept of public decency, isn't it?
Well,
some people are offended by people taking off clothes, others are offended by people putting them on.
But
it's a different world. You should respect diversity, shouldn't you?
Absolutely, and that is precisely why.
So they want to pass a law. You'd be the first to complain about laws allowing people to take all their clothes off in public, wouldn't you?
A secular society has everything to do with bringing different lifestyles together, not suppressing them. I'm agreeing with you. It's about allowing diversity, not suppressing it, and allowing women to go about and wear the face veil if they will.
And allowing the public to choose the laws they want in their own society.
Well, not allowing them to do so is a clear breach of the fundamental right of freedom of religion and freedom of expression.
Okay, Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much indeed. Now could I ask, please, Farzana Hassan to speak for the motion.
Thank you very much. I am supporting the motion because I believe that the burqa and face veil have become a security threat, leading to a number of bank robberies and suicide bombings across the world, where the perpetrators have used the face veil to hide their identity and escape. The security of the public is paramount in this debate, especially in a tense political climate where the threat of terrorism is ever present. I also believe that radicalism grows stronger by the day. The biggest challenge is that proponents of the burqa are inherently evangelical, and their ultimate goal is to spread this practice among all Muslims, especially by scaring them with theology. Women who choose not to wear the face veil are considered apostates at times. At other times, they are told that they might be provoking rape or sexual assault if they don't cover their faces. And women often succumb to these pressures, and they adopt the face veil. But can such choices be considered genuine? It is to protect these women that a ban is absolutely essential. In the absence of a ban, the burqa is likely to spread in society, which is bound to have societal implications. And a society allowing the marginalization, the disappearance of a sizable number of individuals must be seen as a dysfunctional society. It has been my experience that many in the West are reluctant to confront extremism. The face veil has hence already proliferated in many Western neighborhoods, and Western governments are reluctant to pass legislation that is likely to affect a significant number of individuals. A similar scenario must be avoided in countries such as France, where the observance of the burqa as yet remains on the periphery. And restricting certain individual rights to advance the common good is by no means outside the domain of democracy and pluralism. I believe that the face veil has become more of a political statement and has nothing to do with the religion of Islam. And developed modern societies have embraced the notion of gender equality. This is also an Islamic tenet, and I believe that radicals and extremists must not be allowed to endanger this important tenet of Islam. Thank you.
Okay, Farzana Hassan, thank you very much indeed. Exactly how many bank robberies, how many suicide bombings have featured the face veil?
Well, it's not a question of numbers.
Well, of course it is. I mean, you raise it as a security concern. It's either tens, 20s, hundreds.
It is a security concern because
if it's only one, it's not a security concern.
Well, there have been bank robberies in the UK,
no, but how many?
in Canada, quite a number.
How many?
There have been
how many
incidents.
I
don't have statistics, but there have been.
But if you're going to use this as a basis for your argument, it would be helpful.
No. What I'm saying is that the threat of terrorism too is quite pervasive, and I'm not saying that every single Muslim is a terrorist. That's certainly not what I'm implying. But what I'm saying is that
so the security threat is vague. It's vague.
No, it's
you can't
not
give
vague.
me any precise
the
figures.
The thing is that there is no spot identification of people in burqas. That is the problem. And they're able to blend into the crowd and disappear.
But how many times have they refused to be identified if asked by a member of law enforcement?
Well, I have known of several high-profile cases, especially in North America, where women have absolutely refused to take their hijab or their niqab off.
But plenty of cases where they have. Plenty of cases where they have.
They have,
but then, at airports and
but it's
courts.
the people who refuse to integrate, and that's where the problem is coming from. And these are the people who are absolutely refusing to integrate in society. That is a problem. I do not believe in speaking dismissively about a small minority, because these are the people who are calling the shots.
I'm puzzled by one aspect of your argument. I assume you would support a heavy penalty against anyone who forced a woman to wear a face veil. But at the same time, then you're advocating that the state also uses compulsive measures to force a woman not to bear it. So the woman is being squeezed both by people who are forcing her to wear it and people forcing her not to wear it.
Well, I don't believe
You're taking
that
away her choice. Is this a victory for democracy?
No, it is a victory for democracy, and the law has gone through a democratic process. It's been debated in Parliament, so there's nothing undemocratic about the law. And the French legislation targets not the women, it targets more the men who are coercing women. And there are men who are coercing women to adopt the face veil.
All right, Fazana Hassan, thank you very much indeed. Now let me ask, please, Mehdi Hasan to speak against the motion.
Thank you, Tim. Let's be very clear. This is not a debate about the face veil. And I'm not here to defend the face veil. I'm not a fan of the niqab or the burqa. I'm not a fan of tongue studs or belly button rings. I'm not a fan of Jacques' tie either. The point is, however...
This is your problem.
The point is, it is my problem. The point is that this is a debate about the French ban, and there are three very, very simple reasons why we should all be opposed to the French ban. Number one, it's unnecessary. Number two, it's self-defeating. Number three, it's morally wrong. It's unnecessary because less than 2,000 women in France wear the face veil. That's 0.1% of the 2 million adult Muslim women in France. That's 0.003% of the French population as a whole. This is not just taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut. This is like reaching for a bazooka to kill a fly. It is totally disproportionate and unnecessary. And it's self-defeating too, because all it does is it alienates an alienated Muslim minority in France, and it encourages young women in France to act defiantly and break the law and be different. And in fact, we already have evidence that the ban, which is supposed to liberate women, is already secluding and marginalizing and isolating those very same women. You look in Italy in April this year, where a Tunisian-born woman became the first person to be fined for wearing a veil in public. Her husband promptly announced that she would no longer leave the house so that he would avoid paying any more fines. So instead of being imprisoned in her veil, she's now imprisoned in her home. That's what the French call women's liberation. But above all else, it is morally wrong for the state to infringe on women's freedom to choose what they want to wear in public. Whether you like the veil or not, the French ban violates freedom of thought, of conscience, of expression, of religion, a whole string of fundamental human rights, which can now no longer be taken for granted in modern France. There's a reason why leading human rights groups, from Amnesty International to Human Rights Watch, are opposed to this ban, because restricting a woman's freedom to wear the face veil in public is as much a violation of her human rights as it is to force her to wear that same face veil. And I wonder what's happened to the liberty, equality, and fraternity in France. Instead, you have this illiberal, iniquitous, unjust ban, and the parliamentarians in Paris should hang their heads in shame.
Okay, Mehdi Hasan, thank you very much indeed. You say the ban is unnecessary. That's a pretty subjective judgment. There are plenty of people who think it is, so it's just your view. You say it's self-defeating, but we don't know yet because it doesn't come into force for 6 months. And you say it's alienated Muslims, but there are plenty of Muslims who support it. So that doesn't hold up either, does it?
Well, I'm not quite sure where the question is at. Are you saying all my points are wrong?
Well, I'm just saying those particular points.
Well, no, because I gave you an example of where it is.
How do we know it's self-defeating?
Well, I gave you an example. In Italy.
You gave me one person, yeah.
That doesn't make it self-defeating. We haven't had the ban yet.
Exactly.
I can come back in a year and we can have the debate again.
Exactly, but to label it self-defeating now is a little premature, isn't it?
Well, it is self-defeating.
But it hasn't had a chance to be there yet. It hasn't even come into force yet.
Well, in my view, what I'm arguing tonight, Tim, without looking into a crystal ball, is that it is a self-defeating ban based on the evidence we have. It's self-defeating based on all evidence.
On what evidence?
Well, when you ban things and minorities, we have a history across Europe of when you ban things, when you target minorities, they don't, for example, just do what they're told.
So minorities should always get their own way, and if not, they should shout racism and Islamophobia.
Who shouted racism and Islamophobia, Tim? I don't believe I did.
You've quoted people in your articles.
I didn't quote anyone saying racism and Islamophobia at the moment. I'm saying right now, Tim, to you, is that, for example, in 2006, do you want another example?
Here's your article in the New Statesman. Such has been
I'll give you a second example.
You have
2006,
quoted it,
Jacques Straw, 2006, in Britain, said, oh, women should not wear face veils when they come into my surgery. Do you know what happened in Lancashire, Tim? I worked for Sky News then. We went round Lancashire. Every single person who owned a hijab shop said, niqab sales have increased. Young women are coming in here to wear it because they believe that they're being targeted by the British state. That is what will happen in France. I guarantee it.
Why is it so hard to understand that the French are doing this because they simply don't like the niqab? Any more than you. The state already tells people what they can wear and what they can't wear. It already sets limits. You say women shouldn't be told what they can wear and what they can't wear.
That's fine.
Already
so
limits.
The French don't like the niqab, that's fine, but it's still a violation of people's freedom.
But there are already limits on what you can wear. What happens to the limits that every society sets on what people can wear?
Of course.
And you claim they don't?
Well, Tim, hold on. The difference is when a society sets limits on what they can wear, they make it a universal limit. They don't target a minority in their borders.
It's different in each country. There are no universal limits. It's different in each country.
You can't target 2,000 women of a marginalised minority in a mainstream European country where a government that doesn't tackle 10% unemployment rates...
It doesn't say it's targeting women. It just says it's...
Hold on. The French political elite have spent years debating this small article of clothing, as you described it in the opening, rather than tackle, for example, 20% unemployment rates among its Muslim minorities, rather than tackle the banking crisis,
that's just saying countries have other problems. That's just saying countries have other problems. It's not a zero-sum game, is it?
No. Well, I wonder why it is that the French are so obsessed with this article of clothing.
Well, we're going to find out what the audience thinks now, because it's time to throw the question open to them. The motion before us is this House believes that France is right to ban the face veil. We're going to take your questions. A lady in the third row, please.
I just wanted to ask this question from Mr. Jack, or from speakers who are speaking for the motion. How will the French law that bans the face veil differentiate between these two people? One person here is just wearing a surgical mask for fear of getting a disease, catching a disease, and the woman here is wearing a niqab. Who would you fine the 120 euros?
Jacques Myard.
Well, it's very simple. You know, this question of veil is not a question of provocation, it's not a question of amalgamating any problem, as I heard from the other side, without being rational. You can provoke, you can have a medical veil, and of course this is a medical veil, and everybody will look at it and take care of that. The question which is at stake is either do we have, let's say, a certain amount of citizens living apart with special rules, having the veil on their face, going on with other matters like without being examined, for instance, in a hospital by a male doctor, etc., etc. We see today in France that this movement is building a new kind of citizenship, living in a kind of ghetto, and this is not acceptable. This is why we believe that citizenship applies to everyone, every woman, a part of your religion.
Well, I find that the face veil is insulting. I find that it is an insult to people who do not cover their face, because what it says is, I have the right to know who you are, you don't have the right to know who I am, and that's really an affront to society.
Oh, come on. Do you feel the same way about sunglasses?
Okay, Nabila Ramdani.
Sunglasses don't cover identity. It's a question of... It's a question of...
A brief point, then we're going to move on.
Can I just point out at the cynicism of the text of the law, which effectively bans all face coverings, including face veils, crash helmets, fencing, masks, ski masks, balaclavas. But if a woman steps out of her house tomorrow and wears a balaclava, She will be perfectly entitled to do so because it's not banned by the law.
What is banned by the law
happens to cover the face.
Someone who is hiding its face behind a veil. Full stop. The one who will go on the streets by hiding his face, if he's not a policeman in special mission, if it is not carnival, it is not making a film, will be stopped by the police and sent back home. It's very clear. So there is no derogation. It applies to anyone. That's full stop.
Okay, I'm going to take another question. Lady at the back.
Yes, you said that this law is anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim. I find it rather disturbing because most of the people, Muslims who live in France right now, they are not immigrants. We have to take it seriously that they come in as asylum seekers, they're refugees, they come in and they take benefit of all the things that France has to give to them. Like when they come in, many of them, I don't say all, but many of them don't have jobs and they use the social welfare in France.
Okay, you're coming to a question.
Well, the thing is, you cannot say they're anti-immigrant, they're anti-Muslim because France has the largest community of Muslims in whole European countries.
Let's just have them answer that point.
And how does France treat those Muslims? Jacques hasn't mentioned that subject yet. If he's so worried, and if you're so worried about Muslims in France, let's go look at the statistics about Muslims in France. Muslims suffer from discrimination in housing, in employment. Jacques shaking his head. Are you denying the statistics that show that Muslim young men... Hold on.
You are alienating things. This is no rationality in your arguments.
Look, you asked him a question. Give him a chance to answer it.
So let me finish the question. Are you denying, Jacques, and is the questioner denying, that French Muslims suffer all sorts of discrimination in employment, in housing, in education, living in rather poor parts of Paris, and that their problems are going to be solved by 1,900 women having their face veils banned?
Okay, let's come back.
Yeah, come back to that.
I'm a city mayor. I employ, especially if you look at computer division in my mairie, that in my city hall, they are all Muslims, engineers and things like that. So when you speak like that, of course France has economic difficulties, but this is absolutely untrue what you said, because in 98 or even 99% integration, and people become French citizens and are proud of it, and I can give you a lot of examples of that.
I agree.
And when you aim at this way, you have three fingers pointing at you.
I asked about jobs and housing, Jacques, not citizenship.
No, everywhere.
You didn't answer my question.
Everywhere.
What's the unemployment rate? Jacques, what's the unemployment rate amongst young Muslim men?
You can come to my city, which is a bourgeois city, and you will see. Of course, there are.
What's the unemployment rate,
Youth unemployment in France is a big
you've asked the
mistake.
question. It's up to him whether he answers it or not. Okay, we can't spend all time you asking the same question. I'll go back to the question.
The problem is not the problem with unemployment with Muslims. It's just a veil. We're talking about the veil.
No, because
and when you come in a country and you take the citizenship, it comes to you as a privilege. It's not the right. And with that privilege, comes obligations, and the obligation is abiding the laws of France. And the laws of France, from many years ago, it says you cannot show your religion. You can follow a religion,
I don't want to offend the people of the
Arab
Arab world, but citizenship is a right, not a privilege. That's half the problems in many countries of the world. I'm a British citizen by right, not because somebody gave me a privilege to be a British citizen.
I'm going to take another question. Gentleman in the front row, please.
Thank you. My name is Fahad. I'm from Qatar. I thought first we should acknowledge that the niqab is not a symbol of Islam in any way. There's nowhere written in the Quran that the face veil is mandatory or obliged. And secondly, this to the opposition. Isn't the face veil a powerful indicator of a sharply polarized society of liberal French and conservative Muslims? And when banning the face veil, encourage integration and reduce tension and Islamophobia?
Okay. Mehdi Hasan,
No,
to take that?
As I said to Tim earlier, and I know Tim's going to say, give me 100 examples before the law started. No, I believe that if you act in this way with bans from parliaments which target small communities, that doesn't help integration. One of the most strongest arguments against this ban, and I agree with you, the niqab is not a symbol of Islam, nor does the Quran say it should be worn. I agree with you. But if you want those 1,900 women out of 2 million Muslim French women to stop wearing the veil, I don't think you do so by the President of France saying, it's not welcome here, and we will pass a law, and we will crack down on you, and we will fine you, and we will imprison your husbands. I just don't think that's the way you have a dialogue with a community which lacks jobs and housing and respect from the country as a whole. I just don't think that's the way you build communities. It's divisive, not unifying.
Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'd like to come back to that. If there is a law that is passed against it, and you remove the niqab as a visual indicator of this polarized society, then that would, as a result, integrate society. I think you gave an example.
Exactly.
What happens if they don't remove it? They just stay at home. They pull out of school.
If they stay at
jobs.
home, their husbands are persecuted because that's a law. That's called illegal confinement.
How would you know? I mean, this law is absurd. The idea that you're going to go after the husband is absurd.
The law is the law.
How are you going to implement it, Jacques? See, that's an attitude. That's an attitude that builds communities.
We are living in a democratic state.
How are you going
we
to...
are representative of the people. We voted the law, you like it or not.
How are you going to implement this law?
I'm going to let Fazana
law?
Hassan have a say, because the rest of you seem to be hogging the time. Thank you very much.
First of all, I am challenging the notion that this legislation is somehow going to stigmatize the Muslim community. I say that because the Muslim community is certainly not a monolithic community. You can believe that only if you believe that the Muslim community is monolithic. As a matter of fact, there are many Muslims who are opposing the face veil, and for the right reasons. It is coercive, it is misogynistic, it is steeped in patriarchy, and I believe that it is antithetical to Islam. Not only do I believe that Islam does not mandate it, and I'm sorry I disagree with you that it's a symbol of Islam. It is not. I believe that it is antithetical to Islam for two reasons. One, Islam is a religion of moderation, okay? The face veil is a very, very extreme expression of religiosity. It violates a basic Islamic principle. Secondly, Islam believes in the equality of men and women. And I'll tell you why this face veil violates the principle of equality. It places the onus entirely on the woman to ensure that there is decorum in society. That is how it violates the Islamic principle of equality. It violates on two very, very fundamental points.
I'm going to bring that to a close, and I'm going to take a question from the lady in the front row, please.
My name is Rowan. I'm Egyptian. My question is for the opposition. I was wondering, when you're here talking about the French government banning face veil, which is a piece of cloth, why are you not talking to Saudi Arabia, which actually prosecuted a priest for doing his prayers and took him to jail?
I agree completely. But precisely because talking about France and a democracy, we should not allow a state to impose its will on free women. And if France wishes to distinguish itself from countries like Saudi Arabia, surely it should empower its women to make autonomous decisions for themselves. If they wish to cover their faces, they should be able to, precisely because it's not Saudi Arabia.
I believe that the niqab is being pushed as the norm. That is the fear here. I believe that the niqab is proliferating in society.
Could she just finish,
Let me finish, please. What happens, just think about it, what happens if the niqab does become the norm? What sort of an image of Islam are we projecting to the world? I'm sorry, let me finish, please.
Let them come back. Let them come back.
Of the abusive Muslim
could you choose one of you?
On the point about this idea, you keep saying phenomenon. I mean, first of all, where's your evidence? Second of all, let's look at where there is evidence. In Belgium, which passed a ban on the veil, Belgium, which has no government, the parliament couldn't agree on a government, but guess what? They took out a day in order to pass a ban on the veil. Do you know how many women wear the veil in Belgium? 215. So few they could put an exact number on it. I had more people at my wedding
But the
than
numbers
that.
are
And that's
proliferating. The numbers,
what he said.
I'm sorry.
That's what they say.
10 years ago.
It's growing.
I am going to take another question from the audience, please.
And you are an example of it.
Thank you. I'll take another question. Fazana, thank you very much. I'm going to take a question from excuse me. I'm going to take a question from the gentleman up there. Excuse me. I'm going to take a question from the gentleman up there. Could we have some order here? It would be nice.
I'm from the United States. I was just wondering, for the proposition, do you really know somebody just by seeing their face? I mean, that seems like, even if I can see your face, I don't know that you don't do horrible things on your own time, you know?
Jacques Myard, would you like to answer that?
You know, first of all, it's, as I said before, it begins with a veil, but it goes further on. And in fact, this is the entire statute of women in our society which is at stake. Because I have evidence. For instance, as a mayor, I married a woman with 2 witnesses who had a veil. And I said, unveil. She did, as well as the witnesses. But when you look at the case further on, you see that this woman will be forbidden to go to work, will not have possibility to socialize with other women that don't have the same habits as her. So you see, which kind of society do we want in France? Is it something where you live in special boxes, ghettos, and you don't communicate? No. We are citizens of the French Republic on a non-discrimination basis. That's why we say we have common rules to be accepted by anybody.
Okay, Jacques Myard. Mehdi Hasan, let him come in.
Jacques, I mean, the women's rights argument is a very important argument. I'm glad to hear you make it. But I have to say, you know, in France, this is my slight problem with this, is even if I were to accept the legitimacy of your arguments, the political capital that has been spent on this law in France and across Europe, this is a Europe-wide issue in 2010, is bizarre. And you talk about women's rights, you mentioned Joan of Arc in your opening statement. Joan of Arc led us against a barbarian English.
She wasn't the only one.
Well, how many presidents of the French Republic have been women? How many women are there in the French Parliament? Less than a fifth. How many women in the French cabinet? Less than a third. How many French women on the boards of leading French companies? Less than 12%. If we really care about women's rights in France, why not correct all those wider issues before focusing on 1,900 women?
Okay, the ban.
I can tell you one thing. I agree that France has still a lot of progress to do, as many other countries. But I can tell you one thing, that behind each male MP, there are 1 or several women.
I'm going to take a question from the lady in the second row.
My name is Aisha, I'm from Qatar. Well, my question is, let's say you meet someone on Facebook, you don't even know their real name. So what's that difference between them wearing a veil and someone you're meeting and don't even know their name?
Fazana Hassan.
This is a question about, you know, bringing the face veil into the public area. You know, we don't want to know what you do in your private life. That was your question. And this is all about banning the face veil in public spaces. And, you know, I can choose not to interact with you on Facebook, but when you are coming into the public realm covered with your face, I don't really have a choice, which is why it is an injustice to me.
Surely the social bond, as it is referred to in the French Constitution, is about allowing diversity, allowing the manifestation
but diversity
of foreign
cannot
or different
be understood.
lifestyles. It's not about
diversity
suppressing
cannot be understood as an absolute. There are no absolute. When it's a question of individual rights and collective rights, and when there is a conflict, obviously the individual rights have to be subordinated to the collective good.
Where is the conflict? Oh, you're creating the conflict.
No, I'm not creating the conflict. The citizens.
There is no conflict.
There
is no evidence showing that there is any conflict within French society. You are pitting citizens against each other.
All right.
Citizens like me are upset.
Thank you. Gentleman in the third row, you sir.
Mohammed from Yemen. According to your brief statement's proposition, you guys have mentioned that France is placing this law in favor to separate religion from state. But on the other hand, Christianity benefits from multiple advantages, such as vacations during public holidays for Christmas holidays, payment by the government of salaries of churches, of teachers working in Catholic churches, fish in school lunches on Fridays, and so on. this just shows how selective and discrimination that is happening now in France. What do you say about that?
Well, you are most wrong what you said.
Again, surprisingly.
Please, you know, first of all, those who are in so-called religion schools, they are either today Catholics, Jewish, and even now Muslims. So this is applied to everyone if there are schools under contract with the states. So the states pays for the teacher allowance, whatever your religion is.
I just
whatever your religion is. Secondly, I can tell you that on Friday in our canteen, there you can have meat as you can have fish. So what you said is past France, and now is very diverse.
Mehdi Hasan.
I'm a great fan of fish and chips on Friday, and actually on this one issue I have to say I would be with Jacques on this, because actually, to be fair to the French, they are actually opposed to kind of most religions in the public space, and they impose their bans on crucifixes, etc., etc. But one issue that hasn't really been explored properly in this debate, and that is the wider European context. This is not just about France. We're here to debate the French veil ban, but it's part of a wider trend across Europe. You cannot come to me and say this is just about women's faces or Saudi women's diets or driving vision. When I look at my continent of Europe, I'm a British Muslim, and I look across the continent and I see Switzerland banning the minaret. I see Belgium and France banning the veil. I see Geert Wilders in Holland joining the government calling for a ban on the Quran. And I'm supposed to say that none of these things are linked? This is not part of a rise across the whole continent of a very far right, a very dangerous, a very anti-Muslim attitude?
Why is it anti-Muslim attitude?
Well, I just gave you several examples, Tim.
Why isn't it just concern? Why is it always anti-Muslim?
See, well,
why is it anti-Muslim?
Well, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. 80 years ago, when Europeans got really concerned about a religious minority in their midst, it didn't end too well. So don't forgive me for being rather worried when I see the manifestation.
Since 80 years.
Well, tell that to the Bosnians of Sarajevo, Tim, in the heart of Europe. 10,000 Muslims butchered. Let's not be relaxed about the rise of the far right. In every European country, the far right is on the rise, and they are using Islam to bait and get votes.
Let's not pretend
that Nicolas Sarkozy is not trying to play to the gallery.
They're not using Islam. It is a question of radical Islam and the growth of radical Islam.
You're so naive, Farzana. You're so naive. You should meet some of the people in the British National Party. They're not worried about radicalism, they're worried about Islam and me.
If the face veil, if terrorism become the norm, it's going to give my religion a very bad name. That's what's at issue here.
But can you establish
by speaking this way,
can you just say something?
By speaking this way, you are playing a very dangerous game. Because it is true that we have in France, in Switzerland, extremist right. This is true. I am combating them. It's better, I tell you, to ban today something which hurts the deep soul of a nation like France than to have tomorrow misunderstanding, complete misunderstanding. That's why I say we need very clear rules among ourselves. Secular state is a clear rule. And this, you have to defend it. And it means, otherwise, I agree with you, we may have difficulties.
I'm going to move to a question for this side, for those who are against the motion. Do we have some questions for this side? Lady in the second row. Yeah.
I'm Sarah from Iran. Let's say that the face veil is a problem. Let's say you want your citizens not to cover your face. How would you tackle that issue without breaching democracy?
Well, for example, there's great effort made by local authorities, independently from the national opportunistic politicking. And this effort made on the local level works very well. Local imams in local mosques talk to their Muslim community, and they do say to women, it is a religious prescription to wear the face veil, and it is not a religious prescription to wear the face veil. So you have a choice there. And we find that after such effort is made by local councils, local mosques, you find that women actually choose not to wear the face veil. So we have to focus on local politics aside from bigger national debates.
Jacques Myard on this particular point, local, let's say, association can exceed and can succeed, but in fact, they ask us, help, please, because we are facing people who are fanatics and we need a law. So what you say is absolutely just on a marginal success, and we need a common, very clear law to say this is not acceptable. And those are the association we have been hearing during 6 months said, please help.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying that the law is a necessity in certain cases.
So
and this case is
instead of genuinely interacting with the Muslim community, you are
we are
depriving
not
them
aiming
of
at
the
the
fundamental
community.
rights.
The demand came from the Muslim community in France.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Very briefly, in response to the question, it's a very, very good question, and I don't think there's an easy answer to it. But first, just because there's no easy answer, I don't reach for a ban. I mean, Farzana spoke very, very eloquently about the need for equality between the sexes, about what's in the Quran. She made a very good case, and what upsets me is she makes such a good case, but then she doesn't actually want to make the case to those women. She just wants to ban it. And I say, actually, why not make the case? Have dialogue, have debate. Don't ostracize people. Don't demonize them. Hold on. Don't confine them to their houses. Have actually open discussion about this. Have imams from Al-Azhar University, where Tim's got all his references, come and tell them that actually you don't need to wear the face veil. And ask yourself this other question. According to the French Interior Ministry, not only are there only 1,900 women in France who wear the face veil, around a third of them, 1 in 3, are converts to Islam, are white French women who have converted to Islam, not immigrants, as a previous questioner asked. Ask yourself that question. Why are they choosing to wear the face veil? Choosing by definition because they've converted to Islam. So these questions have to be asked. You can't just hide behind some heavy-handed state response in some sort of Saudi style in the heart of Europe.
All right, Farzana
I would like to address this. I would like to address this question about the choice of women in this matter. I, for one, do not believe that these choices are all that authentic, because I believe that many of these women have only been exposed to one particular narrative in Islam, the narrative that says that you're going to hell if you don't cover your faces. And the women, Nabila, in response to what you said, that the women who choose to wear or choose not to wear the veil after being exposed to a different sort of argument and narrative, their husbands will coerce them. Their husbands will then force them into wearing it.
That's very
because
absolutely,
that's not. And
how many women and girls have you spoken to?
Making a case for women's equality, it is not equality to choose patriarchy. It is not feminism to choose to wear a symbol that is absolutely steeped in patriarchy, misogyny.
Okay, I'm going to bring this to a close now, because we're going to have a vote on the motion that this House believes France is right to ban the face veil. Would you take your voting machines, please? I'll just explain to you how they work. If you want to vote for the motion, that is the side represented by those on my right, you're going to have to press button 1. If you want to vote against the motion, that's the side represented by those on my left, it's button 2. Whichever button you want to press, please press it now. You only have to press once. All right, here's the vote coming up on the screen now. "22% for the motion, 78% against. The motion has been resoundingly rejected. All that remains for me to do is to thank our distinguished speakers for coming. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And thank you to you, the audience, for your questions. The Doha Debates will be back again next month. Till then, from all of us on the team, have a safe journey home. Good night. Thank you for coming. Good night.